Alright, sorry about that. I wanted to grab this rib because what I ended up doing, if you look here, I went ahead and I mitered all of my joints on both sides. And I did that because I thought it would be best to have these other bearing surfaces, if you will, for the epoxy and for each member to push against. Rather than having this outer end here come all the way down and end on the bottom cap strip, and then have this one come all the way down and end at the tip of it, I ended up cutting them so they would push against each other, and I did that with all of the joints. Let me see if I can zoom in here and stay in focus. It doesn't look like it's going to stay in focus. Like I said, I'm not a photographer. I don't have any really good equipment. This is just a very simple Canon. It's a still shot camera actually, and I'm trying to take movies with it, so I apologize for the incredibly horrible photos, but that's what I ended up doing. And to get these angles, it took a lot of time and effort, but what I did was I made this sheet and I marked down all of the individual cap strips that I had labeled on the jig. You can see here, here's piece B, C, D, E, F, and so on. And then I have them marked for my miter cuts. This is cap strip F, and the top right angle of that cap strip is 37.5 degrees. The top left angle I have down here is full right, and that just means I slide my miter table all the way over off scale as far as it will go and lock it down to the right to make the top left angle for cap strip F. And I did that with all of the individual pieces, and as I do each rib, I just come in here and I make all my miter cuts and plug them in. So this is like my master sheet, if you will, that I made up to capture all of these individual miter cuts. This angle here for this cut, and the angle here, and so on for all of the strips. But maybe a little maybe a little over the top, if you will, but that's what I wanted to do, because like I said, I felt that it gave the joints a lot more bearing surface and a lot more contact surface to put the epoxy, and they bear on each other a little bit more, and I just felt better doing it that way. Okay, back to the jig. Something that I wanted to point out, another little detail that I learned kind of after the fact that may help you a little bit when you build your jig. Here's a couple pieces of scrap cap strip that I threw in here real quick, and what I wanted to focus on was, if you look how I have this particular jig laid out, I have my backing block here, and I have my two cams here on this side. And what happens is, if you look, this cap strip comes down and the joint would be here. Now when I go to tighten these, especially this one, this cam, it will tend to push the cap strip this way, which would in effect open up this gap. It will try to push this cap strip away from this cap strip, opening up the gap here. And had I thought about it more, I would have reversed these, so the backing block would be on this side, the cam would be on this side, and the cam would tighten the cap strip this direction, which would in effect press it a little bit against this piece, keeping the gap nice rather than trying to force the gap open. So this is just a very minor design flaw that I ran into, that I discovered after the fact when I was actually building my ribs. So that's something you may want to consider when you're building your jig, is to make sure that your clamping force is always into the joints rather than trying to push the cap strip and separate the joint. The other thing is, I don't know if you noticed before that this particular jig is up on these pieces of 2x4. These originally were just to give me clearance so I can get my clamps in here without any issue, but I've decided against clamping, and the 2x4s at this point are relatively pointless. However, after the fact, it turned out that they are very useful because they're, again, you have plenty of space here to get your hands in, and you can get in here with the pencil and mark what you need to mark. And it raises it up off the counter, 3.5, 4 inches, which makes it a little bit nicer to work. It's up a little higher. You don't have to work, humped over, killing your back. So all in all, I am very pleased with the design. It's very, very useful. It's very user-friendly. And so far, let's see, the rib that I just took out of here is flight rib number 3. So I've made 3 flight ribs with this particular jig, and I've been very, very happy with it. It's worked very well. So I've got some still shots that I'm going to incorporate, and I'll narrate some of those as well for this jig. And hopefully between the incredibly lousy video, the even worse explanations and narration and over-the-top proper English that I speak, and the still photographs with that narration, hopefully you can combine all of that and make sense of it and build yourself a nice, useful jig. All right, I think that's enough of that. This horse has been beaten to death, and I believe next I'll move on to either the pre-soak tube that I came up with to soak the cap strips for pre-bending, or maybe I'll get into talking about the actual bender itself. All right, we'll see what comes next. Stand by. Hey everybody. Just wanted to say real quick again, thanks for checking out my YouTube videos, and just a couple of real quick tidbits before you leave. If you'd be so kind as to check out my GoFundMe page, the link is down in the description of these videos. For those of you who find it in your heart to donate for this new cause of mine, I've got another project going on, and there's some really cool things I'd like to do with this aircraft, and again, that's all explained in my GoFundMe. But if you find moved enough to go do that and donate, I've got this horizontal stabilizer skin, and donors will get their name put on this skin, and ultimately when this gets filled and the aircraft gets finished, this is going to be hung up on the wall of honor in my hangar. Just a little bit of recognition for those donors who helped make the project a reality. Another thing too is, I'm sure you've noticed that even this video that I'm making right now is of the same or worse quality than the video that you just watched, and that's because, believe it or not, this camera is the exact same camera that I filmed the original hint videos with. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm not really sure why, but I know the video quality lacks, but hopefully the information within is worth something. And the other thing that I want to mention real quick is, again, these are little snippets from my hint video DVDs, so a lot of these individual clips just kind of come to an abrupt end. That's just the way it is when I'm trying to rip these DVDs apart and re-edit them into small little segments, and they just kind of end weird at times. But that's it. That's all I wanted to say. And again, thanks, and I hope you'll come back, check out my channel, and see if there are any new videos and updates. All right, I'll talk to you then. See you.